معرفة.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Today we will discuss about Islamic funds. Okay. Now the term Islamic fund generally refers to a joint pool wherein investors contribute their surplus money for the purpose of its investment to earn profits in strict conformity with Sharia principles. Now let us take an example here. For example, these are a group of investors and they have some surplus liquidity with them. So these are investors and they have surplus liquidity with them. But these investors do not have skill and the ability to conduct business. So they would like to invest their surplus with somebody who is a skilled person who knows how to invest the money in strict conformity with Sharia principles and give them a return. So for example, if they identify an individual. Now this individual generally is a company which is an Islamic fund company, and for example this is a fund manager. Now this fund, why these investors go to the fund manager? As I said, that these investors are not very skilled and they feel that they do not have the ability and the capability to invest the money in a Sharia compliant manner. At the same time, they feel they do not have the business acumen so that their investment is safely invested and they get a profit out of it. So these investors go to a fund manager because this fund manager is capable and this fund manager is having the skill. So the fund manager has the skill. So these are the investors who take their surplus liquidity and they entrust this liquidity to a fund manager, and this fund manager uses its skill to invest the funds in, for example, a business. So these funds are invested in a business to earn profits. Now this investment here will be done in accordance with Sharia principles. This investment is in line with the guidelines of Sharia. Now after this investment there will be a return, there will be a profit. So for example, the profit goes here like this, and this returns will go back to the investors. So just to understand this mechanism again, okay, an Islamic fund is nothing but a process in which the surplus liquidity of investors is entrusted to a company, and this company uses its skill and uses the principles and the guidelines of Sharia to invest the liquidity in a company or in a business and earn a profit, and this profit is returned back to the investors. So this is in brief an Islamic fund. But in a conventional fund you will realize that this investment pattern here, okay, is not in line totally with Sharia principles, and this is a very important aspect of an Islamic fund, wherein there is a strong emphasis to see to it that the investment which is being done for and on behalf of the investors is done in Sharia compliant manner, and the returns are returned back to the investors in a Sharia compliant manner. And this is in brief. Now this concept of pooling money is not very a recent phenomena. In fact, if you look at the Islamic history, this concept was available in the Arab culture even prior to Islam, where people used to entrust their money to somebody whom they would trust, so that that person would invest in a business and give them back a return or a profit. In the conventional financial world, we see that the development of pooling had started somewhere in the late 1700s in Europe, wherein the concept of funds was initiated, and then we see currently in most of the Europe we find the concept of unit trust, and then in the America we see the concept of mutual funds. So in both, if you see, there is this very strong emphasis that the fund manager is nothing but who acts as a trustee, for example, in a unit trust, and who would invest the money in businesses and gives them back the return. When we call this an Islamic fund, the emphasis is basically on the Sharia compliance part, which is in terms of how the money is invested, where the money is invested, how the profits are being generated. Is the company in which the money is invested Sharia compliant or not? And if it is not compliant, how are we purifying the funds or the returns which we are getting from the investment? So these are some of the important aspects of an Islamic fund. Again, to summarize, as I said, Islamic fund generally refers to a joint pool wherein investors contribute their surplus money and entrust that to a fund manager. This fund manager could be a company or an individual, and this fund manager uses its skill and invests these funds through a prescribed Sharia compliant manner in specific companies which are Sharia compliant, and whatever returns the fund manager gets, these returns are passed back to the investors on a periodic basis. So this is in brief what is an Islamic fund. Let us now discuss about what are the possible legal forms of an Islamic fund. So, legal forms of an Islamic fund. So, as there are two main entities in an Islamic fund, that is the investors. So, these are the investors. And this is the fund manager representing the fund. So, this is the fund manager. Now, there are basically three main legal forms which currently are being used to structure an Islamic fund. The first is the structure of a company. Now, let us understand, in a structure of a company, what would be the role of investors and what would be the role of the fund manager. If the legal form is a company, then the investors would be considered as the shareholders and the fund manager would be considered as the board of directors. For example, if we take the legal form of trust, and this concept is very common, especially in the European world, wherein we see a number of unit trusts. So the unit trusts are structured on the concept of trust, wherein the investors appoint the fund manager. Okay, the investors appoint the fund manager as a trustee to manage their fund. So this is the second legal form. The third legal form, for example, which is generally used, is a partnership. Wherein the fund manager plays the role of a general partner and the investors are appointed as the ordinary partners. So this is the legal form of partnership. So generally, these are the three main legal forms through which Islamic funds are given a legal form or a legal structure.